The lowest rung of the Formula 1 ladder may seem meaningless for some, too early in a driver's career to read much into it, but keen observers will know that this is far from the truth. The 4 Premier European Series have produced serious F1 contenders time and time again in the decade worth of Formula 4 racing so far, so you better get familiar with the kids looking to take the prestigious titles this year. Hello and welcome fellow motorsports fans. Unfortunately, I've been incredibly sick over the weekend and have therefore not managed to watch all the feeder series, so instead we're making an F4 special out of this, and we'll talk about Dan Ticktum's first win in Formula E, so let's get straight to it. It will be a theme for the entire episode, but Italian F4 at Monza came with all the expected chaos and carnage, making it somewhat difficult to draw too many long-term conclusions from the racing. Thus, I want to focus all on the championship dominators Prema for today. Kean Nakamura-Berta may have had an incident with Sebastian Weldon late in the third race, but the pair remained the clear-cut best of the grid throughout the weekend. Crucially, K&B's first race was an outstanding charge from deep down the midfield all the way to the podium, the exact kind of charging drive that made me fall in love with him 2 years ago in Wackersdorf. Truly beautiful stuff. The man now known as Numanchi had great pace all weekend as well, and while he couldn't keep out of trouble in the first couple races, he did end up taking his maiden car racing victory in the last race of the weekend, and crucially, didn't really rely on chaos to do so. That was purely on merit and an excellent sign going forward. Aside from an unnecessary incident, Salim Manar also remained the rock-solid rookie we've come to know and love at this point. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for highly anticipated Williams Jr. Oleksandr Bondarev. Now, there were some upsides. Bondi did show proper good pace for really the first time this weekend, maybe a sign of it being returning tracks for the Ukrainian by now. But that means little if you end up crashing in every single race, and critically, he did bin it himself while leading the first race, a huge missed opportunity. Had anyone told me before the season he looked like the worst of the 3 Prema rookies, I certainly would not have believed you. But as a driver with F1 ambitions, this is already taking a little bit too long to get up to speed, unfortunately, if you ask me. My secret favourite, Thomas Stolzemanis, somehow was absent from this round with no information on his socials. If anyone happens to know what's going on there, please share it with us in the comments. I really missed the Latvian. Instead of talking about the usual inconsistencies over in the US racing camp, Brazilian ace Gabriel Gomes aside of course, I'll end this segment with 2 shoutouts. First, for Alexandre Ruta, the Polish Van Amersfoort driver I haven't mentioned at all so far this year. He may have had an even better time in last round, at least on paper, but he was equally noticeable this time around, at least in terms of the potential displayed. The guy comes pretty much out of nowhere for me with no major European karting background, so I'd suggest closely following his development considering what he has shown in this ultra competitive series so far. And the second shoutout for Luca Visoriano. Yeah sure, it took all of the aforementioned chaos, but he still managed to score a career best of P5 in his outgunned real racing machine. Hats off to the Romanian. Spanish F4 was probably the cleanest of the European F4 action this weekend, that's a surprise, and it did present a familiar look at the front with Thomas Strauven mostly just dicking on the competition to extend his championship lead even further. 6 wins out of 12 races and only a single incident-related race without a podium appearance. Safe to say he'll be crowned champion in no time. This leaves us with a surprisingly tight battle for P2 between Campos teammate Jan Przewski, who had a bit of a disappointing weekend after a great run in qualifying, and MP duo René Lammers and Ian Eijkmans. Not only is Eijkmans the only rookie of the group, but at this point we can make the case of him actually being the best of the trio over the last couple of rounds, and would be a firm P2 if not for the more chaotic racing in the opening rounds. If he keeps this up, he'll no doubt leave this season as the highest rated driver going forward, and I can't wait to see his step up the ladder next season. I said last time that Nathan Tighe will be the most underrated driver by the end of the year, And I have to say, I feel rather validated by his sick win in the second race here, doing it in classic Thai fashion, not just running away from pole, but rather getting all the key overtakes done over the course of the race. Man is a treat to watch and currently a deserved best of the rest in the championship. Of course, it wouldn't be a Spanish F4 segment without talking about the Red Bull Junior drivers Niklas Schaufler and Chris Elfigali. And I have to say, despite Schaufler being a single point ahead in the standings, Elfigali has surprisingly looked like the better of the pair, performing more consistently and making the most of a presumably not so great car. Meanwhile, I can't help but feel Schaufler might be another victim of the Red Bull Junior team curse, where they take young, promising drivers that just seem to crumble under the added pressure. Look at the likes of James Agozzi and Enzo Dellini, for example, both looking much better since leaving that organisation, particularly Agozzi, who we've talked about last week anyway. Sure, Schaufler has always been a little bit hit or miss in his karting days, but it is still a bit painful to watch him going backwards in pretty much every single race. I know he can do a lot better than that. And last but not least, I can't help but feel Juan Cota as being a huge disappointment this season. On the surface level, running in P7 in the standings and scoring consistent points is by no means a bad result, of course, but we have to keep in mind that with his switch to MP Motorsports, he was coming into the season as one of the clear title favourites following his sick P4 with DriveX last year. Really a sad turn of events considering he was supposed to make the step up to Eurocup 3 in the first place. Back in F4 and nowhere near title contention has to be incredibly frustrating for the Spaniard. French F4 is also best described with the term carnage. Spa in super drafty cars, I guess we knew this was going to be a spicy one. Because of the chaos, it was near impossible to draw any strong conclusions from the intense upper midfield. The very top of the field kept its familiar look, although this time it was actually Jules Roussel's weekend to shine ahead of Alexandre Munoz, at least in the regular grid races. Caveat here being that a clash between the pair ended Munoz's race in the last one prematurely, so it certainly wasn't like he was just outclassed or anything. And he still made it a point to be comfortably the most impressive charger in the reverse grid race. Still wondering what sort of miracle happened over the winter for this guy, but it is quite fun to watch. Arthur Dorson continues the rather hilarious trend of being Mr. Reverse Grid, making it 3 out of 3 so far. While I don't take reverse grid results too seriously on this level, it also produced a maiden podium for one of our pretty highly anticipated rookies in the form of Guillaume Bouzard. I can't pronounce that name. The rookie crop of the championship is still fascinating to watch, even if none of them are anywhere near the title hand. There is a good 6 or 7 rather talented kids in there. If most of them have the funds to return, next season could be absolutely epic when it comes to the championship battle. And a shout out for Lisa Biller to end on. After an improved but still somewhat rough start to her first full season, she has finally managed to score her first pair of points in the championship, even if it did require an almost ridiculous amount of carnage. At least she wasn't a part of the incidents this time around. I am of course a certified Lisa Billard fan, even if she hasn't quite lived up to expectations just yet. I reckon if she finds an F1 Academy seat next season, she'll get the opportunity to actually impress a bit more. But maybe we don't have to wait that long. Considering she has driven at Magny-Cours and Lebanon already last season, I'm hoping for some more good runs in the next 2 rounds. British F4 was also a bit of a mess, at least when trying to draw any conclusions from the races. Unfortunately, the most regular looking race didn't get broadcast. You know, the one where our title contenders Fionn McLaughlin and Martin Molnar finished in a solid P1-2 together, presumably, but I do have to guess, totally on merit. To be fair, the third race was shaping up to produce the same result until some mid-race rain started inducing chaos and a subsequent red flag, somehow leaving young Thomas Behrman with his maiden victory. Now, I don't want to say he doesn't deserve it, still had to keep the car on the road for a few more corners than his rivals, but let's just say this wasn't exactly a breakout result that I'd expect to see repeated as a result. Looking at the rest of high-tech, I have to say I am a little disappointed by Leo Robinson so far this season. Sure, there were flashes of great speed, but no consistency to match. Not a great look when your rookie teammate is wiping the floor with you like that. And of course, even Behrman is ahead in the standings by now. Xavier Avramidis, on the other hand, I don't think was ever expected to do particularly great, at least not in my book. Decent karting driver at best, certainly someone who was always going to struggle on a grid as stacked as this. I have to say, the quality of British F4 seems to be really high this season overall. And a few words about my favourite GB4 driver this season, Ari Bansal, who has joined British F4 with Fortec last round, and really he has hit the ground running, immediately establishing himself as a consistent point scorer. And if it wasn't for the rain, he looked all set to score his maiden podium in the last race of the weekend. Definitely a joy to watch, much like in GB4, and clearly a pretty big talent. If he ends up doing the full season next year, he'll be high up on my list of favourites for sure. Formula E had a bit of a mad race on a hot and dirty racetrack, somehow resulting in Dan Ticktum taking his first E-Prix victory thanks to both a great drive and some utter carnage. Now, we can hate on Ticktum all we want, but he has been driving the wheels of that Cupra all year long, and it is kinda satisfying that he finally got a look at the top step of the podium. I reckon he and Barnard are both probably the hottest prospects on the driver market right now, obvious title contenders aside of course. The only caveat for Ticktum's performance is that we don't really have anyone to compare him to, with David Backman consistently shitting the bed after a couple flashes of potential early in the season. As much as I wish it was different, he is surely done after this year, isn't he? The other big story concerns the title battle, as Ollie Rowland and Nissan once again had a bit of an underwhelming day, making it 2 in a row. But nevertheless, he somehow managed to ever so slightly extend his championship gap because rival Pascal Wehrlein did even worse. The latter continues to be super hit or miss on any given weekend, meaning he has given teammate Antonio Felix da Costa a great shot at taking P2 overall going forward. Between the Porsches, Taylor Barnard and potentially even Dan Ticktum, the battle for P2 should remain a banger until the end of the year. Rowland really just has to avoid DNFs and he'll be crowned champion very soon, I reckon. Shout out for Jake Dennis, finally having a great race again, even if it ended in tears, partly because Nick de Vries decided he has had enough. Nevertheless, I really miss these sorts of runs from Dennis. And while I wasn't at the height of my mental capabilities while watching, we still need to do our quick weekly karting report. The shifter portion of the European Championship had its second round, and in many ways it was more of the same, both in terms of the top performers, but also with tyre drama in the background allegedly affecting the results big time. In KZ2, it was another perfect weekend for young Russian star Maxim Orlov. Kid really looks unstoppable at the moment. He managed to win the final by an outrageous 12 seconds. This is really about as dominant as it gets in this sport. I was pleased to see Markus Kajak striking back though. After losing out to his teammate in Valencia, the reigning German champion found himself as a comfortable P2 this time out. And believe it or not, this was actually his first ever podium appearance in the Euros. Quite mad if you think about it. And in KZ, we also had back-to-back victories, in this case for Birrell ace Pedro Hiltbrand, also coming up with a nearly flawless weekend. Much like in Orlov's case, it'll be rather difficult to keep the man away from the title in the final round. We did have a neat comeback from class rookie and reigning European KZ2 champion Mateusz Bergel though. After he wasn't able to replicate his Champions of the Future form in Valencia, he was the clear-cut number 2 man this weekend, dominating the heats until Hiltbrand just found that little bit extra from the superheat onward. Still, really good stuff from the young Frenchman. Now, if only they could race on real tyres, that'd be great. And that was already it for the week, I guess. Sorry for the short episode, since we'll only have F1, 2 and 3 next weekend, I'll probably throw in a couple of the ones we missed this week. Definitely feel like Eurocup 3 and the Road to Indy would deserve some coverage, and I think a tiny delay shouldn't hurt too much. Either way, for now it is your time to drop all of your opinions and predictions down in the comments so we can get our lovely little discussion going. And otherwise, I thank you all for watching and I do hope to catch you in the next one.